As my final persuasion speech, I will be talking about why schools should enforce stricter dress codes. The opposing side argues in many ways that expression is a reason to keep uniforms out of public and private schools. The argument most of the time is it's not fair. My reply to that is, if everything in life was fair, we would all get to be president and prom queen. Setting a standard of rules for students to follow, requiring them to dress a certain way, helps them to learn that not everything in life is fair. Another argument that came up is it takes away the voice of the students. You don't need to wear certain clothes to have a voice. Students can express themselves and wear uniforms. Your voice should be through your opinions and actions, not by the way you look. Another argument that came up was it takes away individuality. It's just another way the school board can control the students. I can see why certain children would look at it this way, but teachers and school staff are there to help us and help us become a marketable resource for our near future, and not to boss us around. While at school, students should focus on the education and not who has the better clothes. Another argument from the opposing side was when people wear certain clothes, it gives others an easy way to tell them what kind of person they are. Like, they're saying it gives them an easier way for us to judge them. If someone wants to be a certain way, we should let them. You shouldn't tell others what to do or how to live. My reply to that is wearing uniforms takes away that ability that kids have on their peers to judge them on their wardrobe. By what someone wears doesn't necessarily mean that that's their character. Poor kids don't have enough money to wear more expensive clothes, and I think that's a really easy thing to judge someone on, and it can be very misleading. Using the simple argument, "Don't tell me how to live," is just a simple way for teens to show their need to retaliate. If the law didn't tell criminals how to live and not to murder, where would we all be? Another argument that came up was students need to be comfortable at school and uniforms aren't comfortable. I think this argument is really arrogant because it's just an excuse. Instead of thinking of starched up bottoms and scratchy button-up shirts, they need to think about comfortable alternatives like polos and denim jeans. There's a lot more ways you can wear a uniform and be comfortable than just wearing a plaid skirt. An argument that came up from the opposing side was they don't need to be taught to follow a dress code. Following the dress code isn't a skill for jobs, it's just simply a task. This could be true if you already are used to following rules all your life, but even though following the dress code specifically is not a skill, following rules is a needed skill to be taught. If one was never taught to follow the rules of higher authority like your parents or school officials or the law or especially your boss, what makes you think that someone would follow a simple rule like wearing a suit to work in the future? The opposing side argues, how does not having a dress code take away from the learning process? That doesn't make sense to them. Well, if a student is dressed like they're ready to learn, the evidence shows that the attitude will follow. The student won't have to be worried about what to wear that day or how their outfit looks compared to the others at school. It will, in turn, rise their confidence, and it takes away another factor that would interrupt the learning process. The opposing side argues, how does having a dress code a certain way prepare us for the outside world? Plenty of people out of high school dress the way they want and are successful. This may be true, But setting a dress code and saying it will help prepare a student for the outside world doesn't necessarily mean that the student will attain a job in the future that requires that student to dress a certain way. It simply sets a basis of standards that are required in the professional world outside of high school. Students that are taught to follow a dress code won't be surprised and outraged when they are forced to dress a certain way in the outside world. That's how the world works, and there has to be stability. Students don't really notice it most of the time, but teachers have a dress code too. You don't see teachers arguing with their bosses about it that they have to wear suits and dresses to work every day. How is it a safety issue? The opposing side argues there is no way wearing a uniform can keep students safe. They just think it's illogical. Well, there are many ways uniforms can actually keep a body of students away from harm. Uniforms can help administrators notice people who stand out in the crowd. For example, visitors and trespassers and other non-students. It can also help prevent gangs from forming or identifying themselves on campus, which can be a very messy matter. The opposing argument also argues that uniforms won't bring the school together socially. They think students like certain people because of their personalities and not their clothes. But on an everyday basis, we do judge people on their outside appearance. Although it may not be true for most people, there are some that bully because some people don't have as nice things as someone else. Uniforms can help break those economic and social barriers for students. If they all look the same, how will they know who's richer than someone else? There was no counter-argument to this one, but uniforms can also help reduce the amount of robberies at school. It can diminish the possibilities of being robbed of expensive clothes, jewelry, shoes, and etc. This is a very common thing, and I myself have experienced this in the locker room during athletics and many other times where a student gets robbed of their nice items. The opposing side argues that instead of removing a student with baggy pants for being a distraction, why don't the administrators remove the student who disrupts the class and doesn't want to learn? Well, school systems do actually have disciplinary acts that take care of these matters, such as in-school suspension, or ISS, suspension, expulsion, and detention. Distractions. The opposing side argues that guys don't find shoulders attractive. This is just one example, but why can girls not show a little more skin? They argue it's hot outside. Well, skimpy clothes do distract teenage boys from focusing on their lessons. Girls just don't understand why, but boys' and girls' minds work differently. When girls start wearing tight clothing and shirts that show their stomach and short skirts and shorts, there becomes a problem. The opposing side argues, how is unnatural hair color a distraction? If you think about it, dress code has to be equal. If one person is told not to do something, everyone has to abide by that rule and vice versa. You wouldn't like it if someone was told they could do something and you weren't. It just wouldn't be fair. If someone was allowed to dye the ends of their hair hot pink, who is to stop the person who wants to have a 5-foot-tall purple mohawk? Schools have to draw the line at a reasonable place that is fair to everyone. My conclusion is dress codes provide a safer and more professional environment for kids to learn that will prepare them for the rules of the professional world they will have to face in the near future.